So, when you hear the name Frankenstein, what comes to mind? Probably a big, lumbering monster with bolts in his neck, right? But the thing is, Mary Shelley's novel is so much more than just a scary story. It's this incredible mirror held up to a world that was in complete and utter chaos, a world being torn apart by climate disaster, by social upheaval, and by absolutely devastating personal loss.
Which brings up a fascinating question. How does a horror story like this even come to be? Believe me, it's not just from a single nightmare. So let's pull back the curtain and dig into the real story behind the story.
Okay, we all know the famous origin story. It's 1816, you've got this group of young literary superstars, Mary Godwin, Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, all stuck inside a villa in Switzerland because the weather is just awful. To kill time, they challenge each other to write a ghost story. And boom, out of that gloomy summer, Frankenstein is born. It's a great tale, but honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Because here's the truth. The world outside that villa wasn't just having a gloomy summer. It was in the middle of a full-blown global climate catastrophe. And that crisis seeps into every single page of this book.
A year before that ghost story contest, all the way on the other side of the planet, a volcano called Mount Tambora erupted with unbelievable world-changing force. It basically threw a giant blanket of ash into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and causing temperatures to just plummet. The result wasn't one bad summer. We're talking about 3 straight years of climate chaos, of crops failing, and of famine and disease spreading everywhere. That terrible weather they were talking about, it was a global disaster.
The effect was, well, apocalyptic, especially in Switzerland, which was one of the hardest hit places in all of Europe. You read eyewitness accounts from the time, and it sounds like something straight out of a horror film. Famine was so bad that people were literally eating grass to survive. The death toll was just staggering, with reports that the Rhine River was actually clogged with the bodies of people who'd starved to death.
And this is where the contrast becomes so jarring it's hard to even wrap your head around. Inside the villa, you've got Mary Shelley and her friends talking literature and telling scary stories. But just miles away, a real-life horror show is unfolding. Tens of thousands of desperate, starving climate refugees are on the move, suffering in ways we can't imagine. It was so bad that some mothers admitted they considered drowning their own children just to end their misery.
So here's the crucial connection. When you see the world through that lens, the creature himself starts to look very different. He's not just some symbol of science gone wrong. Think about it. He is feared and hated just because of how he looks. He suffers from the inclemency of the season? Sure. But the book says he suffers even more from the barbarity of man. It's like Shelley took all the pain and suffering of those real-life refugees and poured it into this single, tragic character.
But it wasn't just the environment that was in chaos. The entire social and political system of Europe felt like it was falling apart at the seams. And this world of injustice, became a huge target for Shelley's critique. You have to remember who her parents were. We're talking about the pioneering feminist Mary Wollstonecraft and the radical philosopher William Godwin. She basically grew up breathing this air of rebellion against an unfair system. So is it any surprise that Frankenstein is just jam-packed with takedowns of the legal system, of class prejudice, of the way power works? Not at all. And you want a perfect example? Just look at the trial of Justine Moritz, the family's loyal servant. She's accused of a murder she didn't commit, and her trial is an absolute sham. Shelley's own words in the book call it a wretched mockery of justice. I mean, that's not subtle. It's a direct shot at a legal system she saw as totally broken and biased against the poor.
And Justine isn't the only one. The book is full of characters who are chewed up by this broken system. Safi's father is condemned because of his religion and his money. The de Lacy family, good people, are ruined just for trying to do the right thing. Over and over, Shelley shows us that justice is anything but blind when it comes to your class or your background.
Okay, so we've looked at the world outside and the social structures, but now we need to turn inward, because woven through all of this is a story of personal grief so profound it's almost hard to bear.
It is wild to think about this, but Mary Shelley was only 18 years old when she started writing Frankenstein. And by that point, her life had already been just defined by death. Her own mother died giving birth to her, which is a heavy thing to carry. Then her first child, a baby girl, died just days after she was born. And in the same year she started the novel, her half-sister committed suicide, and so did Percy Shelley's wife. I mean, that's an almost unimaginable amount of trauma.
This line from her journal is just, it's heartbreaking. After her daughter died, she wrote, "Dream that my little baby came to life again. I awake and find no baby."
It shows you just how deep this ache was, this obsession with bringing the dead back to life.
Now listen to this. Victor Frankenstein uses almost those exact same words to explain why he starts his work. He is driven by that same desperate, all-consuming wish to beat death that haunted Mary Shelley herself. This isn't just fiction. This is an author pouring her own deepest, most painful wishes right into the heart of her character.
When you see it this way, Victor's whole journey is basically a case study in trauma. The death of his mother sends him into isolation and obsession. That turns into a kind of mania, a euphoric high where he thinks he can be a god. But the second his creation opens its eyes, he crashes. He completely dissociates, gets sick, can't face it, and from there, it's just a long slide into a deep depression that completely destroys him. That's not a plot, that's the arc of grief.
So, when you bring all three of these things together, the climate disaster, the social injustice, and the personal trauma, you really start to get why this book is still so terrifyingly relevant, even 200 years later.
I mean, think about it. The story of a creation, abandoned, born into a world that hates it and doesn't understand it, that resonates so powerfully today. With artificial intelligence, with genetic engineering, aren't we asking the same exact questions? What happens when the things we make get beyond our control? And that's the book's timeless warning, isn't it? Victor Frankenstein's greatest sin wasn't creating the monster, it was abandoning him. It was his failure to take responsibility, to be a parent and a guide to this life he brought into the world. That right there is the central ethical problem, and it feels more urgent now than it ever has.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. As we keep innovating and creating new technologies, new systems, you name it, we have to ask ourselves, are we prepared to love our monsters? Because as Mary Shelley warned us 2 centuries ago, a creation abandoned by its creator, full of rage and hurt, well, that's a horror of our own making, and it is always our responsibility